Morning, Paul.
It's a pleasure having you. What brought you to do that yesterday, over the weekend on Twitter?
Well, there was a question from an Asian American reporter at a press conference. I do press conferences every week. I think that's important. You know, one of them lasted an hour, and I started by saying I'm just going to answer questions, and so I got an hour's worth of questions. I think that's important. The press, to me, Paul, it's just every person out there that happens to be working and can't be in front of me to ask that question. So I spent a lot of time, and that was one of the questions she gave to me. It's just shocking to me what happened in Atlanta, and I guess I expressed myself about that.
Now, the last I heard, it wasn't so much against Asian Americans as far as a racial situation. It was a sexual proclivity that the guy had.
Right, that's what the guy claims, and you know, that's why he said he did it. So I don't know, just the horror of killing seven women and one man that just happened to be walking by was horrific to me. You know,
and I've seen a couple of articles on this, and to me it really, again, spotlights the state of Mississippi. And I know this because I grew up in the Delta, where we had a big influx of Italian Americans, Chinese Americans, Jewish. We were a melting pot up in the Mississippi Delta area. And we never, ever even thought about anything like that because the Asian Americans are some of the finest people that you've ever seen. And we're all one big family. And it's one of the things about Mississippi that people don't think about, but it is just another plus for our state.
In a lot of ways, Paul, we have assimilated ourselves better than when you see all the things that are happening in Minneapolis, Portland, go all the way across the country that are occurring. But they're not happening in Mississippi. We've gotten past that, thank the Lord, and I don't think we'll go back to that. We've been in school together for 3 or 4 generations now. We work and we live close to each other. We don't have any really big towns. Jackson's a couple 100,000, but we don't have any really big towns. Everybody lives pretty close to each other.
I'm laughing to myself because you bring that. It was an interview I saw from some northern reporter who came down and did a story on the Asian Americans in the Delta. Yeah. And when the guy was talking, and he said, "You know, y'all need to come down here and talk to us. And the guy was looking at him like, "Wait a minute, what kind of an accent is that? You talking about assimilation?" I mean, you had an Asian American Bubba, and you cannot get a better job of assimilation.
Well, we've been blessed in Mississippi to have a melting pot that I think is far superior to what's going on in other Chicago and just about everywhere else.
You said you were working on the budget yesterday.
We did. Chairman Hobson, Chairman Harkins, Josh Harkins from Rankin, and I, 3 staff members, my chief of staff, Nathan, and all of us were locked up in the Capitol yesterday all afternoon, starting around 2 o'clock till probably 7 or 8 o'clock last night, going through line by line the budget for Mississippi.
What did you learn that you didn't know?
Well, first of all, we knew there were going to be a lot of requests. There are always a lot of requests, but what we have to do, Paul, is balance the income that we've got. We have probably, certainly never in the history of Mississippi have we received $5.6 billion from the federal government. That's a whole year's budget. Then our people, our unemployed people, and some that are employed, less than $150,000, are getting $3.4 billion. So that money is going into the economy. So last week we met with the Speaker, Philip Gunn, and I and the other staff members met, and we increased the budget for next year by 3%. So that 3% was, well, it runs about 200 and something million. I've got it here, but an increase for those. And now, so we're now planning on putting that money back in.
Adding it back into different agencies?
That is correct. And then one of the things I thought was really important, 2 things about this. One, that we gave back to agencies and companies and whatever that needed that money. Those are taxpayer money. There's not our money, so the money we receive from taxpayers. So, for example, a teacher pay raise is $52 million a year recurring revenue, and we've sent it.
And that's done. The teacher pay raise was one of the things that the governor signed.
Well, it was passed the House and the Senate. I don't know whether he signed it or not, but it's in his desk over there. So I think he will sign it. He said he would. So that's one thing, for example, a teacher pay raise. We've got horrible low pay for correction officers, and our corrections chairman is trying to trying to get them up to a speed where we don't have all the problems we've had in prisons. Some of that involves dismantling people from Parchment and putting them in other areas. So there's a lot of things going on in the correction area. There's a number of different needs around the state, of course. And when we got this money, Paul, I don't know if you've seen this or not, but I finally got a spreadsheet or not on this. We get $1.8 billion that we can spend under certain guidelines, which include infrastructure, broadband, water, sewer, PPP, lost revenue, negative economic impacts to households and businesses. So a pretty broad definition, but with strings. And then for example, the schools get $1.6 billion. $1.6 billion, Paul. And then the emergency assistance to non-public schools, private schools, get $32 million. This is Mississippi's share of this. Higher education gets $429 million. Some of that goes to HBCUs. The number, I think, is about $80 million directly to historically black colleges and universities. The others go out to the other 7 or 8 universities we have here, and that pays for some of their tuition and then losses from PPE and economic losses that they may have had. But as you go across the board, it's $5.8 billion.
All right, $1.8 billion for infrastructure.
No, $1.8 billion has several different categories.
Okay. Well, infrastructure,
small businesses,
infrastructure,
okay. Water and sewer is part of that. That's correct.
$1.6 billion for K through 12.
Yes, sir. $1.627 billion.
$429 for IHL.
That's correct.
When will that money be here?
It starts in tranches. I think we get half this year and half next year.
When will it be appropriated? When will the legislature will delve this out? Will dole this out?
That's why I always like to come talk to you. You asked the right question.
Yeah.
We've got a problem or a positive
special session. It's going to have to be a
something.
Special session.
We met with the speaker and the leadership in the House, I guess Thursday or Friday morning about this very issue. The governor has to apply for this, and he can apply up in the next 60 days. Then the government has 30 days to give it to us, send us our checks. So that would put us out probably April, May, June, somewhere in the June range if everything kind of worked. Mm-hmm. If not, it may be later than that. So we don't have any regulations right now. I've contacted our Senate and our House members and asked them, do you know anything about this? There are no regulations, so we don't know what the further restrictions are. And that may well indeed require us to come back at some point in time as soon as we get this money in.
But you also have to wait for the people that want this money to do an RFP or something, don't you?
Yes. Well, some of it, like $932 million of this, goes out to cities less than 50,000, which in Mississippi is about all of them except for 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And so we have to come distribute that money as well. And it may go on population.
When will that? There's no way to do that before the session.
No,
that's
incredible. No,
you can't extend the session for that.
Well, I don't know what we're going to do. Quite, if you want an honest number, we may have to save. We've saved a few days by not coming in on Fridays and stuff. We've saved enough days to come back in.
But still, by the time you try to figure out, well, I can understand the $1.6 billion the education gets.
They get that money,
that.
But the $1.8 billion, and then
who needs it the most?
Who needs it most for which ones? And then $932 million goes out to cities.
Let's take Medicaid, Wildlife Fund, and income tax when we go. Let's take the Wildlife Fund first of all.
Okay.
Let's talk about that. Where are we now as far as that? It's in conference. Has anything happened since the last time we talked?
Well, a lot. Real pleased that the bill made it out of the Senate and also, of course, out of the House. We're in a conference now. I have been working with the Wildlife Fisheries and Parks the last week or so to identify the projects. I don't think anybody is opposed to funding public projects, so we're all on the same wavelength about that. The sticking part in the bill is the House says that they want to fund private property and also what they call NGOs, non-profit organizations that are not non-governmental organizations. So, for example, Ducks Unlimited, Nature Conservancy, which I work with tremendously and very pleased with, have do a great organization. I work with them to acquire that 17,000 acres we acquired over in Warren County, the Phil Bryant, now be in our hands forever. And I work with them also on acquiring property on the coast. They do a great job. But I think our needs are public first, Paul, in my own mind. We need to fix our public parks. We got a number from them, $147 million to put them back in full spread. So before I start giving private money out, I wanted to fix our public property.
Is there a way to phase in the private? One of the questions was, with Mississippi having more than 80% private lands, how do you explain opposition to the conservation groups on this one when 80% of is private lands as far as the groups that are involved? Is there a way to phase in later on stage 2?
I think there is. As soon as we get our state parks and all of our acquisitions.
Would you be opposed to that?
Once I get state parks and everything else put together, no. Our needs are 2 properties that they want to acquire. I got the values on exactly what those are. I'd like to fund those acquisitions for Mississippians. This long-term public use is very important to me, Paul, and most of our society can't be in some big club or anything, and so they really revolve around use of hunting on public spaces. That's why we acquired the 17,000 acres over in Warren County and Issaquah County when I was Secretary.
Is there anything in the stimulus that may be able to fund this
not on this part, no, sir.
Not even from that first $1.8 billion?
No.
That you have some discretionary
spending? It doesn't address public. There are some public parks, and there's some money in there for tourism, which would, in my mind, maybe help us get our public parks back on.
Which, by the way, is that going to happen this year? Is that a dead deal as far as making tourism standalone agency?
Right now, it came out of the Senate, was killed in the House, but I'm learning of my second year up there. Nothing's dead till they close the door.
So that's still a possibility.
I don't know. It could come back alive. We really need that because we need a state tourism group, and it's tied in with the MDA, and they're doing economic development, which they should be doing. And I don't think that tourism is a good part of that. It needs to have its own agency. So without adding any money to it, just moving the employees and making the executive director appointed by the governor, we would be able to focus on tourism.
But you think that's still alive?
I know it's dead in the House and it's alive in the Senate, I think. So whether or not it comes back in some other form, I don't know. It should, though, I can tell you that.
The cutoff date on this one is toward the end of the session as far as the wildlife is concerned.
The wildlife will finish this year. It's in conference, so our Neil Whaley, Senator Whaley, and our other senators will be meeting with them.
Here's the feedback that I get, that we're playing games by not doing the diversion, because if you've got to go to the legislature every year and beg for money, there's no way to plan out 5, 10, 15 years. There's no way to come and plan even for 1 year, fiscal year, to be able to get matching funds to put that process in order, unless you have a guaranteed
amount of money. Let me ask you this, Paul. You know how much we defer right now? You know how much we divert?
You're talking about for diversion
out of the state's money.
Other things.
Yeah, and everything. Do you know?
I have no idea.
33%. At the rate we're going, there won't be really any need to come except to vote for half the budget.
What would another $1 million make it? 39%?
No, they're not asking for $1 million. They're asking for $800,000 a month to start, and then gradually up to $20 million a year.
So that's a no-go for you as far as
of course we have a record year. This year would be a great year to fund. That's why I've asked them to give me every project that they wanted for this year, and there's 2 of them, and I think we'll fund those this year. And you're right, there may be a year like last year when we had to cut education, we had to cut the correction, we had to cut everybody 2.5%. Well, I don't want to be funding that at that particular time when we're in bad times. So, yeah, you should come to the legislature every year. We shouldn't. By the way, Paul, this goes to a entity that is not controlled by the government. It's appointed people that come out here and run this money. I think you've appointed some people, the legislature, to make those decisions. And those decisions, when they're given the bright light of day and not used for private property, that's a recipe for getting us in trouble. And the people just got indicted last week for that.
Could the chairman of the House and Senate, as far as wildlife, be part of that board?
No, it was an independent, they're ex officio, I think. I can't remember what the board is. We authorized the board in there, but the legislature picks the particular projects to go. Yeah. And you got to be careful about diversion. It's such an easy thing. Let's divert for that. How about we divert for home payments? How about we divert for this?
So once again, because I want to move on to the other things.
Yeah.
A diversion schematic on this, a diversion plan to do this is a no-go.
I don't think we should do that. No, I do not. And I don't think we should use it on private property. I think we ought to use it on our own parks and our own public land, and I think we ought to acquire our own public land.
If you came back and you said, all right, the government will write into this bill a 5-year plan or whatever it happens to be with the sunset to put a minimum of this amount of money in there from the government as far as year to year, fiscal year to fiscal year, unless there is an economic downturn, and if it falls below, if growth falls below a certain percentage, then you could go back and mitigate that number. Something that
Paul, what I did, though, instead of getting into all the esoteric about it, I asked them, what do you want? Tell me which projects you got that are, quote, shovel-ready. As you know, that usually takes another year after they're, quote, shovel-ready. I only got 2. I got redoing the parks for $147 million, and I have 2 projects they want to buy, and I think we do that. So that gets us this year. We actually do what they've asked us to do.
What was the total cost on that?
Well, doing the parks was $147 million. The other land acquisitions were about 11 to 12 million.
Yeah, those were one-time deals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. So, final thoughts on this, as far as, and if you guys talked about this in the last.
The final thought is, we have to have public spaces, and those need to be funded. Everybody agrees to that. When you get to not giving private people money, who may, I should say, private people money, and you also get to giving non-governmental organizations that you don't control money, you divert state dollars to where you don't control it. And those are private entities, Paul. I'm a Ducks Unlimited for the last 40 years. I paid dues just paid it again. There are a lot of people participate in that, but I've got so many public needs, Paul, that I need to address those first.
Let's get to Medicaid. Where do we stand on Medicaid?
We're at the point, we have a bill that we passed, and then, as you know, it died back and forth about twice. We brought it up again, we sent it in, and now, it's my understanding, we will be in conference. Now, the conference committee reports are pretty close. We're talking about the difference, for example, in postpartum. We put postpartum coverage because we have a lot of moms that may not have the appropriate health care, and then their babies don't have the appropriate health care. So it was a big thing to the Senate to have postpartum care. We wanted to make sure that you could get credentialed to work quicker. So there's a number of good things, and I think, Paul, about 20-something million from the state and another $60 million from the feds. I think we increased funding by about $80 million under the Senate plan. Now, we'll get back from the House very shortly. I don't think we're very far apart, and I'm hopeful that'll come on through this week.
When Chairman Blackwell was on, I asked him what was the cost of the Senate.
Yes, about $20 million.
About $19 to $20 million.
$20 million was ours, and then the House's would be probably about 60 or 70% of that, about $10 million maybe.
And that's where we are now on that one.
That's correct.
But that's got to be done, or else we'll have to have a special session.
Well, I think both Philip Gunn and I are committed to getting that done.
It's going to be done this week?
I hope so.
Let's get to the personal income tax. And is there any movement on that one other than a study committee?
Not really. We had... give you a little bit of background. They started out with a tax swap arrangement where they taxed some people about $250 million, and then they lowered others, and they increased to 9.5% the sales tax. That would make, I think, the highest in the country with our other taxes we levy on those. And we had a plethora of no's. Everybody from the Mississippi Economic Council to the AARP wrote me letters saying don't do that. MEC, Mississippi Manufacturers Association, automobile dealers, mobile home manufacturers, all of them said no. So my senators went home in the last 2 weeks. As they've come back, every one of them said no, we can't do this particular bill.